Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head back to England. We're going to return to the county of Yorkshire and specifically to the city of Leeds, which we know has a fairly bustling craft beer scene these days. I do need to go there and check it out for myself sometime. But for this review we're going to return to a brewery you've seen me review a good number of things from, Northern Monk Brewery, and we're going to have a taste of another beer in their recently rebranded core range. So this one is the Heathen Ipa, which comes in at 7.2%, and it's supposed to be a really nice beer, this one. It has a 96, I think it was, overall on Rate Beer, and it was rated well into the 4 stars when I checked it out on Untappd as well. So really curious to see how this one turns out. Most of the beers that I've reviewed in recent times from Northern Monk have been the Patrons Project beers, which are always quite interesting, but it's always good to go back to their core range and just see what different things are on offer there. So really looking forward to trying this one, and as always I hope you guys enjoy my take on this beer. So anyway, as is usual with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Northern Monk before. No doubt there will be some more in the near future. There's all the usual social media. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the English beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Northern Monk then, on to my brewery notes quickly. So as I mentioned to you earlier, Northern Monk are based in Leeds, and they were founded back in 2013 by Russell Bissett. So he started brewing in his mum's basement, and then he officially launched the company at the Sparrow Beer Cafe in Bradford in Yorkshire. But in August of 2014 the company was moved to the old Flax store in the city of Leeds at Marshall's Mill, and they've been working to expand their brewing capacity ever since then. But they say that they like to pay homage to the old monastic brewing that used to go on in England for centuries, but largely it's overlooked these days. You know, if anyone thinks of, you know, monks brewing and monastic brewing, I feel like it's always Belgian beer that really pops to mind. But this was quite prominent in England as well for a number of decades and centuries actually. But at the brewery they've also got their refectory as well, which is their bar and restaurant, and they currently brew over 20,000 pints of beer per week, which goes all over the world. These guys are a fairly widely exporting English craft brewer. If you like, they're one of the bigger names when it comes to English craft beer. But they also have their Patrons Project as well, which is where they team up with other breweries for collaboration brews. They've also done things with local restaurants. Usually the artwork on these beers is designed by local artists, and usually they invite other people to come in and just take part on the brew and things like that as well. And probably the most interesting and experimental beers that you'll get from Northern Monk are the ones that come out of the Patrons Project. But in addition to that, they've got their core range, they've got their Twist series, they've got seasonals that they do as well, and I think they've got a couple of barrel aged ones that they release every so often as well. So yeah, a really interesting brewery, this one. Probably one of the more established English craft breweries. You know, everyone really knows Northern Monk. That's if they're a quite a well-versed beer drinker in England, so, and probably those of you watching from abroad actually know this company fairly well as well. So yeah, another beer from their core range, one that I've never tried before, so I'm very curious to see how this one turns out. I do need to try the porter in their core range as well, but I think I've tried a couple of the little 330 ones, the IPAs and stuff like that. But definitely, if you're interested in English craft beer, this is definitely a brewery that you have to check out. But that's all you really need to know about Northern Monk for the moment. If you want to learn a little bit more, of course, you can check out the brewery website in the description below, and you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram and things like that, and that will keep you up to date with all the latest goings on at the brewery. So yeah, let's get on to the actual tasting of this beer itself. I'll say before I opened up this one, this is yet another beer that I bought through Glassbanken.se. They've got a warehouse in Denmark. They import their beers into Sweden that way, and that gets them round the alcohol laws here. It is a little bit pricey, right enough, but you will get some beers that you've never kind of come across before, which is pretty interesting. This is the first time, if memory serves me correctly, that I've seen Northern Monk in Sweden, other than for collaboration brews and things like that. So I guess in that regard, it is pretty cool. But I'll put their link in the description for you below, and you you can have a little look at what they've got. But yeah, I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork of this one before we open it up. They've recently kind of rebranded their, they've kind of just changed the artwork and stuff on their core range beers fairly recently. They used to be a little bit different than that, but the Northern Monk symbol, of course, is very, very distinctive. All of the beers within the core range have a similar style of artwork to this, usually just a slightly different colour. It tells you a little bit on the side here. Heathen India Pale Ale, a bold yet balanced New England IPA, soft, resinous and tropical for the heathens, unpasteurised and unfined. This is a fresh product and should be enjoyed as such. Keep it cool and enjoy responsibly. Brewed in the north with Ben Hulse. So yeah, nicely presented beer, this one. But yeah, let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting. This one, incidentally, when I checked it on the website, they said this beer is hopped mainly with Citra, but there are some English hops in there as well, and it's got a British pale malt base on it, or an English pale malt base. I don't think in Scotland we produce pale malt, but you know, in England they always describe things as being British. But yeah, 7.2% New England IPA, this one, and we'll see how we get on. There's the top of the can, nice little orange pull on that to match the artwork, but let's get it out and we will get on with the tasting. Oh yeah, now as soon as you open this beer up, you get some of these lovely fruity notes out of the Citra. But yeah, look at that, this is a lovely big pale hazy beast of a beer. Just be careful with this, because you know, if you go a bit mental with it, the head can get a little bit out of control, but we think we've got a fairly nice balance there. That'll just fade away quite nicely. So yeah, this can incidentally is a 440 milliliter one, which seems to be, you know, a lot of English breweries are copying this to be closer to the American pint, which I believe is 473 if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, as you can see with this beer, it's poured, if I hold it up to the light, a really nice kind of bright but hazy yellow golden colour. There's a solid 2-finger of a frothy and kind of bumpy white head on this one. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass there, and a few little ones just heading up towards the bottom of that head there. But the head, as you can see, is just receding a little bit, and it will kind of die down a little bit the more and more that you drink of this beer. And if I put my fingers behind the glass, you can see that it is pretty much completely opaque, which is what you would expect from a New England style IPA. But yeah, it looks very, very nice. Nothing particularly surprising about this one in terms of its appearance, so let's take a closer look at the aroma and just see how we get on then. Yeah, I mean, the thing that you're going to notice about this beer is that it's, you know, it is, the malt base in this one smells distinctively different, and it did say on the website that they put a pale malt base in this, but they did say that there's wheat. It says on the side of the can here that there is wheat and oats in this one, and you know, you really do need you need at least oats in a New England IPA to give it the haziness. It is the oats that give you the hazy side of the beer, but also you get the wheatiness in there. But this beer, to me, the malt base in this one does smell quite reserved in comparison to, for example, some of the New England IPAs that you're going to find over here in Sweden. It is quite different, actually. And I mean, we've got some really good producers over here. Oakbygårds with the New Sweden IPA, Omnipojo with the Fata Morgana, Stigberts and OO Brewing do various different things. But yeah, the malt base in this one does smell it does smell really quite laid back, actually, by comparison. This one, it's quite it is a little bit more reserved, if you like, but you can definitely smell there's a little bit of the kind of wheaty, bready kind of thing in there, but very, very mild. You can pick up a little bit of the sweetness from the oats, but really it's got quite a kind of almost astringenty quite note to it. This one, it smells very, very light and very kind of almost pale in terms of the malt, if that makes sense. There's not a lot coming out of the malt base of this beer for me. If I take it in a bit more deeply, if I sugar it up, yeah, if I sugar it up, there's almost a tiny little bit of a slightly vegetable kind of thing comes out of it, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, it's really, the malt base doesn't have too much prominence in this beer. There's maybe a little touch of a biscuity side of things in there, but you know, overall not too punchy in terms of its malt base. Underneath that though, you can, or besides that, you can pick up some of the hoppy qualities. You can definitely pick up a little tiny touch of an English earthiness, some of the herbal qualities that you might expect. They've probably used, you know, a bit of Kent Goldings or something like that in here. It's definitely not Fugels or something like that. Like, it definitely has a little bit of that English floral, herbal type quality. The English hops are very, very distinctive, of course, because of that kind of herbal quality that they have. But yeah, it's really, it's quite interesting just how everything goes together in this beer. On the fruity side of things, of course, you do get a nice sort of mango quality to this beer. When they've used Citra in it, you know, mango is the big telltale sign of Citra, and you can really pick up that nice juicy mango note in there. But there is a sharp kind of lemony quality to this beer as well for me, and I think the yeast maybe is playing a little bit of a role in bringing that out. But there's also a little bit of a kind of sharper grassy note to the beer. Like, in terms of the green side of the hops, it has that floral herbal kind of thing, but the grassiness does start to push its way out a little bit more. There could be, I do wonder, maybe there's a little touch of Centennial in there, but to me there is a little bit of a vegetal herbal kind of thing coming out of this beer, and that's one of these distinctive characteristics of the English hops. I mean, personally, I've always been a far greater fan. If you're going to use a sort of base hop, if you like, I would always go for the German hops over the English ones, because they're just a little bit more smooth, if you like. I've always found the English hops, I'm not a great fan of the earthy kind of herbal quality that comes out of these, but I can understand why they did this. They want to kind of try and build a bridge between the English relays, if you like, I guess, and the more kind of modern American style craft beers. But, you know, aroma's not the most important thing. I will admit I'm not the greatest fan of the aroma in this beer, but we'll have a taste of it and just see how we get on. I have had beers like this before where I've thought the aroma is a bit kind of meh, but the flavour has turned out to be very good, so hopefully this is another beer that kind of goes along that lines. But let's get stuck into this one then. This one is the Heathen IPA, coming in at 7.2% from Northern Monk Brewing Company in Leeds in Yorkshire in England. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål. Yeah. Now, I'll say straight away, this beer, it is one of these ones where the aroma's kind of meh, but the flavour of the beer is pretty damn nice, I have to say. So big thumbs up to Northern Monk for this one. The taste in this beer, it's really nice. I mean, that's on one sip, and it's always interesting. I mean, I've had beers from Omnipollo, who everyone knows Omnipollo is a very, very good brewery. I've had beers from a couple of other breweries as well that are very prominent, where I've thought with the aroma, but you know, the flavour of this beer really comes across a lot more nicely, I think, than the aroma does. So with this one, maybe don't spend too much time smelling the aroma of the beer. Just kind of get stuck into it, because the aroma, I don't think, is as good as the actual taste of the beer itself. And I will admit, I was a little bit worried actually when I first had a taste of that, but trust me on this, this is a really pretty nice beer. Let's get the last of it into the glass, and we'll go on with this review then. So with this beer, it actually has a good little bit of an impact. I noticed that when I was taking it in there. It comes in and it's actually quite sharp on the taste. It's got a good little bit of bite to it in the beginning, which is really nice. But yeah, straight away with this one, you can feel it does have a nice smooth bready malt base to it, and it's quite different actually compared to the other New England IPAs that I've had in recent times. So it does have an element of smoothness to it, but there's a little bit more of a kind of grainy quality in there. And if we compare this to, you know, the German white breads and the English white breads, this one definitely has a little bit more of a grainy quality to it. The pale malt in there, it does almost have this slightly kind of astringent feel to it. But and the further you go into the aftertaste, this beer, it reminds me a little bit of in German beers when they use Pilsner malt. It does have that really almost crisp quality to it. You can really feel the malt base in this beer drying out the further you go into the aftertaste. I do find that the middle of your mouth, or the middle of my mouth at least, becomes quite dry in this beer the more and more that I drink of it. But yeah, it goes together really quite nicely, this one. But yeah, you've got that smooth malty base to it. There is something in there that's a little bit vegetal or something like that. It does come out a little bit in the flavour. But then the further you go into this beer, and I'm finding the more that you drink of this, you do get some of the wheaty qualities of the beer. The wheat does help smooth the beer out a little bit, and there's also a bit of that oaty creaminess. And if you go to the very centre of your palate, there is a little touch of a kind of brown sugary note to this one. You definitely get a little bit of a kind of slightly sweet caramel there, and as you go further out from the centre of your palate, it becomes a little bit more kind of biscuity. There is a sort of sweet graininess to this beer, but the further you go into the aftertaste again, it has a little bit of that, it does just have a little touch of graininess to it, this beer, which is quite interesting. But I've always found English malt is a little bit more grainy in comparison to, say, German malt, for example, Weyermann malt from Bamberg, and the American malts are always very smooth but a little bit sweeter. It's always interesting when you have different beers from different countries and you use different malt from different places. There's so many different variables, of course, that you can change in a beer recipe to alter the flavours. And you know, it works. It's just that's one of the great things about reviewing all these different beers, of course. But to me, the malt base in this beer for me is particularly dry, and this beer does have a good little bit of a drying effect to it. But the flavours go together pretty damn well. The way that the flavours combine, pardon me, is really quite nice. Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting how everything goes together in this beer. I'm finding that the more and more I drink of it, the more my palate's kind of adjusting to this particular beer as well. You do get more and more sweetness out of the wheat and the oatiness in this beer the more that you drink it. And I really have to admit, I like that aspect of this beer. It came in and it was almost a little bit vegetal and herbal in the malt base in the beginning, which is quite unusual actually. But the more and more that I drink of this beer, the more that it the more that it sweetens up a little bit. So just be aware of this one. It might take you a few kind of sips to get properly into what this beer is offering you. But the malt base really, I have warmed to this malt base a little bit over the last couple of sips that I've taken this one actually. But yeah, make no mistake about this. This is a good beer, but it is one I would say that you have to let your palate adjust to a little bit and have a go at, because compared to the other New England IPAs that you're going to, I guess if we're in England we're talking about like Magic Rock and Cloudwater and Deya and a couple of other breweries and things like that. If you are comparing this to some of those other breweries, this one to me is it's not quite as smooth and as creamy as you can get from some of the other English breweries, but it does work really nicely. The malt base is just a little bit lighter than this, but it does, in fairness, sweeten up the further that you go into the flavour, particularly into the aftertaste actually. So on the hoppy side of things with this beer then, back corners of the palate, you've definitely got a little touch of earthiness there. As you come further forward along the sides of the tongue, you've got a nice little bit of earthy and herbal quality there. If you move further towards the front corners of the palate, it does become a little bit more spicy and floral, and that'll be the American hops, the Citra particularly, starting to have a little bit more of an influence on it. I do wonder if they've used a little bit of Columbus in here as a bittering hop, because it does have a little bit of that almost... Columbus has a very distinct, almost licoricey kind of curry sort of thing. It feels... when you have the spice from the Columbus, it just makes the side of your palate feel quite cool, quite cold almost, and you do get that with this beer. So I do wonder if they've used a little bit of Columbus in here as a bittering hop, but I don't think they've used too much of it. But round the very front curve of the palate, you've got a lighter grassy type part of the beer, and the way that the green side of the hops always comes out in these beers is quite interesting as well. But to me, there's a good balance here between the American side of the hops and the English side of hops. You've got the herbal kind of earthy thing that you'd expect from the English side of things, but you've got a little bit more of the spicy kind of grassy side of the green side of hops that you would expect from the American hops too. So there's a really interesting kind of fight for power going on there, which is kind of interesting. But behind the front curve of the palate, you've got that little oily bubble where those juicy, fruity esters start to come out of the beer, and that's where this beer really starts to find the balance, to be honest. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty much a kind of straight up Citra beer, this one, in terms of its fruitiness. At the if you go behind the front curve of the tongue, of course, that's where I always say you get that little oily bubble where those juicy, fruity esters start to come out of the beer. At the very back of that oily bubble, you've got a little bit of a kind of grapefruity note to it. There's just a little teeny touch of that very dark, almost sour grapefruit note, but as soon as you come forward from that, you start to get the nice juicy mangoes, and then if you move towards the front of the tongue, you start to get the lychee, you start to get some of the more kind of lychee, gooseberry type notes out of this beer. I want to say there's a good touch of lime to this as well. I'm noticing just at the very front of my palate there's a little bit of a limey flavour to this one, which is really interesting. There's almost a little bit of a kind of lemony quality in there as well, so I do wonder if there's maybe a little bit of Centennial being used. I wouldn't be surprised if they've used Columbus and Centennial to back up the Citra in some way. But yeah, the way that all the hops in this beer go together is very, very nice. So if I was having to guess, I think they've maybe used a little bit of Kent Goldings. I think perhaps, I mean, they've definitely got Citra in there. They admit they've got Citra, but I think there's a little bit of Kent Goldings, perhaps a little bit of Centennial, and also some Columbus. I think there's something like that in here. But it's a very well balanced beer. This, the aroma, as I said at the start, isn't my favourite aroma that I've come across from a craft beer, because that's the herbal, vegetal kind of thing that's going on in the aroma. But the way that the flavour goes together in this beer, I would say, is very, very nice. So a big thumbs up to Northern Monk for the way they've pulled this one off. But yeah, I wouldn't hesitate to drink that again. This was really quite nice. New England IPA, quite quirky for the style, I would say, and that's one of the things. I'm sure when I checked out on Rate Beer as well, it had like a 96 or something like that overall, but it had a 51 or 52 within the category, and you can kind of see why with this one. The malt base is quite different with this because it has that, it's just a little bit lighter, but it has that kind of vegetal quality going on with it as well, so just be aware of that when you actually when you try this beer for yourself. But yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel then, this is a mid-bodied beer. Carbonation's quite smooth on this one. It's got a good balance between a wet mouthfeel. It's more wet and slightly creamy than it is oily, in fairness. In terms of IBUs, I think we're talking about 30-ish IBUs, 25, 30-ish IBUs. It does have a good little bit of a kick to it in the beginning, so that I was wondering whether to say it was maybe 40, but I think it is more of a 30 IBU beer. This, the malt base is really interesting. It has a little bit of a kind of astringent quality to it, but the more and more you drink of it, the smoother it becomes, and you do start to get a little bit more of the sweeter aspects of the beer out of it as well. But a nice juicy fruitiness also, which is really nice. And this is one of these beers where just everything goes together pretty nicely. So I would say quite quirky within the New England IPA style, but it's got a nice juicy fruitiness. It sweetens up the further that you go into it, and it's got a really interesting balance going on between the kind of English IPA side of things and also the American New England IPA. It's probably a hybrid beer, this one, between an English IPA and a New England IPA. So a very, I guess you could say it's a really interesting hybrid beer, this. So just have a taste of it for yourself and see what you think. I've quite enjoyed trying this one, I have to admit, and I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink it again. So yeah, just try it for yourself and see what you reckon. I've enjoyed this. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This one is the Heathen IPA, coming in at 7.2% from Northern Monk in Leeds in Yorkshire, England. A really quite interesting IPA. This video has probably gone on for a little bit longer than I would have wanted, but it really is a beer that's taken me a while to wrap my head around, and as a beer reviewer you do want things that are like this. But it's in the core range now at Northern Monk, shouldn't be too difficult for you to get, so have a go at it for yourself and just see what you think. But I've enjoyed tasting this one, and I hope you guys have enjoyed my take on this beer as well. So let's leave it at that. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Northern Monk as well, and we will return to these guys in the fairly near future. Make sure you check out my social media, make sure you check out some of these beers, and I will catch you guys very soon. The Heathen IPA, a New England IPA, coming in at 7.2% from Northern Monk Brewery in Leeds, Yorkshire, England. Until the next time, stand just now, and I'll catch you guys later. Skål.